Good grief. Okay. So today we are going to not that. Today we are going to discuss how to develop and maintain trusting relationships in a family. Now I'm gonna see if I can get this screen. There it is. There's my screen share. Okay, and I need to how do I start it? View. Slideshow. There we go. Okay. I want to start by saying I am not by any means the expert on this. I am not, I've taken the parent educator course, and it helps me to facilitate discussion, and it helps me to bring some of their points together, but I am still learning all of these things, and I feel like I can probably learn just as much from any other parent as anyone can from this course. I am facilitating this course. I am for sure not an expert. So, and the Healthy Family Trust is regarded as a precious possession, carefully developed and nurtured as both children and parents profess through their various stages of family life together. Building trust takes parents and children together. It's not just do parents trust their children, it's also do children trust their parents, and it's something that both sides have to work on. Do you kind of agree?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is what we're hoping to do today in our little 30 minutes. We're hoping that you'll recognize some of these things. I don't like personally being having slides read to me, so I don't really want to read slides to anybody. And obviously you're here, so you feel like you probably recognize a lot of these things. So I want you to think about does your child have like their favorite stuffy or lovey that they carry around with them? I know my kiddos do. Or maybe you had one as a child. What were some of the reasons that you love that stuffed animal, or love that, or maybe a favorite book? What are some of the reasons that you really just wanted that book read to you, or your kids want that book read to them? What do you think?
I think, well, both of them are different, but I think Tali's more of a book person. And I think, which one is it? It's the Brown Bear one. But that one, I think she carries around more of a comfort thing. Mm-hmm. Especially since we moved here from a different state. So like we had all our friends and stuff there. So I think that's her little comfort thing, like right now, so that she feels somewhat still in like a routine like she had over there. So yeah. I think it developed that. So
absolutely. And a lot of times with stories, children will feel like they have, since they can predict the outcome, they know what's coming next. There's a big sense of security in that. And especially like you were talking about during moves, during transitions, finding that security and that predictability is super important for kids. And so if a favorite book can offer it, then that's absolutely, they'll just gravitate even more towards it.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, got it. So can you think of a time when you weren't trusted, and how did that make you feel? We actually my daughter and I talked about this the other day.
Trusted as far as like in what setting, I guess?
Well, it could be as a kiddo, like if you remember a time when you didn't feel like you were trusted as a child, or if you ever feel like as an adult, there's been a time that you were not trusted, and how did that?
I think as a kid, I mean, it's always over like little things, I guess, when you're a kid. It's like, oh, did you, I don't know, pick up your toys? And then, like, you know, you don't really clean, you like put it under your bed or something. But I mean, yeah, that's like the only thing I can really think of like not being trusted. I don't think I've ever felt not trusted. I'm really trying to think of something because I try to do, and I try to teach the kids that too, like always, you know, be the way, always act the way, like if, you know, someone else is around you or like other people or, you know, paying attention to you, like don't think like you can just act like however just because you think no one's watching you or no one cares or something like that. So, well, I always just try to be conscious about that and tell them to be conscious about that. But I haven't felt that way in a long time, not trusted.
Yeah, my kids and I, we've talked about how trust is incremental. Like the more that they build trust with their father and I, the more that we can trust them to do other things. Like if I don't feel like I can trust them to keep their room tidy, I don't feel like I could trust them to go to another person's house and not make a giant mess
Right.
and be kind of, obnoxious to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. So this is one of Erik Erikson's stages of psychological development. And you can see like the very first psychological thing is, see if you can see my mouse here, is trust versus mistrust when you're an infant. So trust is built early on, and just like having your needs met, like can I trust this person to meet my needs as an infant is such a like a foundational stone. And so like all of these things like build on it, right?
Right.
So if you see a kiddo that's having struggling with guilt as a schooler, then they probably have had trust, mistrust. It's probably they're just not as far up the development ladder because they've had struggles in their early life. I was supposed to ask before I flip to that slide. How do you define trust?
Trust. I guess just knowing that the person, like I said, is gonna do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So, you know, I guess my thing is like lead by example. And there's like some quote that I usually like to live by is, you know, children don't learn what you teach them. It's more of like how you act or how you are around other people. So that's what they mimic. So that's the trust that I try to be like, you know, even though I know, you know, that person's probably not going to see that, like, I don't know, like I picked up their trash and I put it in the trash can myself. Like that doesn't mean, you know, you shouldn't do that. So like just trust to just, I don't know, just do the right thing at all times, even if like nobody's looking. So
Yeah, I like that. I think like wrapped up in that is like just being able to talk to someone without really worrying, right? Because you know that that person's not going to react in a harsh way.
right.
And yeah, just being able to confide your feelings and like if you or your child make a mistake, then being able to like talk about it, not really worry that it's going to become a bigger thing than it really needs to.
Right.
So where does trust begin? We kind of talked about this. Begins at birth and in early infancy. And that's when kiddos start to learn trust. And when they don't learn trust, that's when we run into like children that are anxious or insecure, they lack confidence in themselves. They can have low self-esteem. They can be unwilling to take risks. They can have a hard time with reciprocal relationships. And they can, as they get older, they'll start to examine motives. Like they'll try to look for hidden motives in other people. Like, why are you being nice to me? What are you trying to get out of it? That kind of thing. So the next thing we're going to look at is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You've probably seen that before.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, this is kind of a trust pyramid. Like, the more I can trust, the healthier my like the more of my needs are going to be met and the healthier I'm going to be. All right. So if I can trust that my physiological needs are met, let's see if I can read today. And then my safety needs are met, then I can trust that I can start to trust that my social needs are going to be met. And it just goes on, and it's just built on itself. I mean, you probably have seen that in your own kiddos.
Yeah, yeah, and that starts with like little basic things like, oh, I don't know, jump off this rock and I'll catch you, whatever, or like jump off that and like let me catch you, like little things like that. That's where it starts from.
Absolutely, and then being able to trust themselves, like when they feel like they can jump off the rock and they can catch themselves on their feet. You know, like obviously some children are more daring than others, but
yeah, mine are.
But that's good though, because that means that they are more willing to take risks because they know that they have a safety net. And that's important, because if we didn't have risk takers, you know, our society would not have evolved, you know, I mean, so it's all very important. This is, I mean, if you're familiar with Maslow's system, which sounds like you are, I mean, you understand you have to have basic needs met before you can get anywhere up further up the ladder. And those are pretty straightforward. How do you build trust after infancy? So once they become, you know, toddlers and pre-K students and up, what do you think?
I'm trying to think. Like from elementary or like?
I would say you can start at elementary and then you can just go up the age spectrum.
Let me see. Because the other one I'm more familiar with than this guy. I guess, yeah, like self-actualization, esteem needs, social needs, safety needs, basic needs. I guess it all just goes in that order. Like I said, from little things, and then it could be into big things. But the basic needs, yeah, that I think is super important so that they can, you know, excel and go to the rest of them. Because I mean, if kids are hungry, they're not going to concentrate, or like if kids are whatever emotionally distraught, they're not going to be able to get to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Some of the ways that we can do that as parents are making sure that we are communicating in a way that is satisfying for both of us. So, you know, not yelling or trying not to yell. I know that we all make that mistake sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah, setting limits for the kiddos. So, like enforcing bedtime is kind of a big one, because they need sleep. Children need a lot of sleep, but they don't think they do, right?
Right.
Don't give them that limit, like you really need to be in bed. Then they're going to, you know, because they're tired, they're going to start to just act out and sleep less, and it's just going to a vicious cycle. So, I mean,
Yes.
yeah, being present for your kiddos is huge, you know, not just being there, but being like mentally there. Maintaining love during times of conflict, you know, I always try to getting real close when I'm having to, I use the word discipline, not in like punish, but in like having to reinforce things with my children. I try to make sure I'm right there on their eye level, and I'm close to them. Like I might put my arm around them. And so like they know that like this is a hard thing that we have to do together, but we are in it together. Yeah, let's see here. So we have, how are we doing on time? Oh, it's pretty good. So we have a role-playing slide. The wrong way on my, hang on my paper, sorry. Here it is. I printed it and it printed like I flip it on the tall edge instead of the long edge, if that makes sense. So now it's like I have to flip it upside down anyway.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Confused as I'm looking. Would you like to pick one of the situations and tell me how you would react to it?
Let me see. Well, number 3 is not relevant to me yet, so probably number 2.
Okay.
Number 2. Wants to sleep over at a friend's house. Like home. It's funny though, cause like I don't know. I guess my son, he's 7, so like I do let him do sleepovers. Like he just did one last weekend with my nephew, and my nephew turned 12. But he doesn't really get homesick, and if he does, I don't think he tells anybody. But I always try to tell him like, hey, if you get homesick, like just message me, and maybe you just need to like, talk to me, or I can tell you good night or something. But like, you're in a safe place. Like I wouldn't take you somewhere where I didn't think you felt safe. So yeah. If that was to happen, I think that's what I would say. But usually they're pretty good about, especially him. He's pretty good about like being, I don't know how to say it. Like he's pretty okay. Like if I tell him it's okay, like I feel like you said, like he trusts that I wouldn't put him in a place where I think danger would occur, or like we talk about stuff. So if something's not okay, like he feels comfortable enough to tell me like, oh, hey, this happened. And, it hurt my feelings, or I, got pretty mad about it. And then I'm like, well, what did you do? And so I think just communicating like, hey, if you feel this way, it's okay. But if you need to talk, like you can call me. But I've never had to pick them up, not yet. So
yeah. And I know I don't have adolescents either, but I love what you're saying about like giving him reassurance, and then like he can take that. I think that applies to situation 3, where if you feel like you can trust your child to do the right thing, even if you're not there, if they know that you don't allow them to drink alcoholic beverages, then and those are there at the party, then you should be able to trust them to call you so that you can come pick them up so they can leave. We've already, in my family, we've talked about like using code words, so they don't have to sound like a party pooper or whatever, but then they can still tell the parent something's, I'm in a situation that I don't want to be in, or a situation that's not safe. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. Like recognizing when things are like not okay, or if they're, not okay, I guess to you and your family, because what might be okay to us might not be a big deal to somebody else, but just knowing your family's boundaries, I think, is important.
Yes. So how can parents, well, here, before we move on real quick, if your adolescent did like let you know, hey mom, there's beer at this party and I don't really feel comfortable with this, and I know that you don't really want me to be at a party that's like this, can you come get me? How would that make you feel?
I think I would feel like, I don't know, I guess like kind of honored that they were like, I know it's silly, but like to, confide in me and, be that person that they're comfortable with. Cause I mean, parents aren't supposed to be, like a friend type, but at the same time, you should be looked at as like kind of like a role model, because that is your parent. And that's like, we tend to mimic our parents' behaviors. So I would hope that they would feel comfortable enough to be like, hey, you know what, I don't feel safe, instead of, you know, seeking out somebody else instead of the parent, because that somebody else might, you know, make it seem like it's fine, it's okay. But if they're trying to get out of something, I think that's really nice that they trust you enough to be like, hey, you know what, I'm not okay, please help me. So it's just asking for help.
I think that's exactly it. I know that my goal as a parent is for my child, to both of my children, to trust me enough that they could come to me in a situation like that and not worry about that I'm just going to explode at them. That they would see that we are, that is our trust in our relationship, that I would see that they're trying to do the right thing, and that they would see that I'm going to help them to do the right thing. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. And see, and that can stem from, I know we didn't touch on situation one, but like where it says like always drops and breaks something, like you reassuring them, like even though they do drop or break something, like if they're trying to set a table, like not yelling and getting upset, but be like, you know what, if you try it this way, then you know it, you could do it by yourself. So that's like, that's where it can stem from, to get to, I guess, situation 3 is like putting that into them when they're like toddlers, even if it seems small and insignificant. I think it makes a big difference.
100% agree. They build on each other, right? If just like Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Erik Erikson's psychological identification ladder, like if it builds, and so if the bottom doesn't get established very strongly, it's not gonna build.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly.
So how can parents break trust?
I think not following through with what you said you're gonna do. I think that's like the number one.
Yeah.
Of like breaking trust.
Yep. Look at that. Number 1, consistent discipline.
Yep. Yeah.
And breaking promises, very closely linked.
Yes.
I would say. What do you think about this uncompromising demands?
Uncompromising demands. Uncompromising demands. Is that like, I'm trying to think of an example. Like, it's funny because yesterday, I don't know, it's like super small and seems insignificant, but I was like, oh, dang. My son put on, and this is going to sound dumb, but he had like a gray shirt and gray shorts on. And I'm like, Jason, why are you wearing 2 gray things? Like, I've already told you, like, you don't put 2 of the same colors together, like, you know, wear khaki or something. So it's like, you know, I'm kind of being ridiculous with like expecting him to like know that, like, you know, you don't put 2 colors like that together. Like, I don't know. It would just, but I was like, you know what? I am asking him too much, because that's kind of silly. Like, he's 7, like that. I think that I was like not really compromising, like, hey, like, he's 7. Why would he know how to, like, you know, just pick clothes? That's why we always pick clothes together. So that was my fault. But still, like, I was just like, why did I think, you know, that demanding that was like, okay, and it's not. So that was my uncompromising demand this week.
Sure. I think that's a pretty good example. Something that comes to my mind is like demanding that a child makes specific grades, for example, when like maybe that child is not an A student, and that's okay. If that child's very best is B's, like glory be for B's, you know, like as long as that child is putting forth their best, not demanding that that end goal be a specific thing, but that the end goal be the child doing their best. Does that make sense?
Right. Like the child doing their best,
Yeah.
not necessarily somebody else's best who, like, I don't know, might get A's, but
Right.
not to make it seem like their B's aren't just as good as that person's A's.
Yeah, I think that's a very strong uncompromising demand that could cause I don't want to say emotional abuse. I see that's our next point, but like I think that could cause some like self-doubt and some potentially some negative self-talk and things like that. So
Right.
Yeah, and definitely like, well, you don't trust that I'm doing my best, and my best isn't good enough. So it could lead to some low self-esteem too.
Right.
But then, so you were talking about like your kiddo wanting to wear the same color top and bottom, but then how did you fix that problem? I'm guessing it's somewhere in this column kind of situation.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. I was like, oh my gosh, because I was just like, why are you like, I caught myself being ugly, and I was just like, man, I was like, I'm, like, as parents, like, you're just like, dude, that's like common sense, but it's really not. Like, it's one of those things that you have to, like, I don't know, step back and be like, hey, you know what, they're 7. So I was just like, well, I was like, if you want to wear the gray and gray, that's fine. Like, I was like, I just thought, like, you want to put a different color. If you don't want to, that's okay. And he's like, okay. And then he moved on and that was it. But it was just like, I had to catch myself being ridiculous. So, because then it does turn into emotional abuse, because then you're like, oh, well, that looks dumb. Why are you doing that? That's stupid. And like, just those ugly words, like, just, I hate using the word dumb and stupid, especially when it comes to kids, because then it's like, that's what they hear.
Mhm.
And then that's emotional abuse, because then they're like, oh, hey, I'm dumb and I'm stupid because my mom said. So it's just like, like I said, it's very little insignificant things that people might think are super small, but then it can turn into really big things. So it's just recognizing, when you're doing things that potentially could just, I guess, stick with them, and you didn't think it would, but it kind of lingers there. So I was just like, you know what? I was like, you can pick those colors. It's totally fine. I was like, just make sure, like, next time, I don't know, like, wear something, like, to put like a little color. I forgot, I said something like that, just so that, I guess, he's not one color, which is like silly. Like, I think it's just like a weird thing with me, but I was like, just, whatever, just put it out next time so that I know what you're going to wear. So it doesn't throw me off. So it's just communicating that, I think, would help too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. How can children break trust?
Really had that. Trying to think of something that's happened. Talia is really sneaky. So I had to watch her, because I feel like she was, and this is also silly too, she was on her iPad, playing ABC Mouse, whatever. And then I walked out of the room to get something from the kitchen, and then she was like watching YouTube. And then and then I go back to her and she switches it to ABC Mouse, and I'm like, Talia, were you not on ABC Mouse? And she just looks at me, and I'm like, no, you do not need to be on on the iPad on YouTube. So I was like, you can go ahead and give me that, because that wasn't okay. And then I think, like, the next time she was okay, and like she didn't switch to it. But I mean, that, I was like, how, like, sneaky are you at 3? Like, that's so she already kind of broke my trust with the iPad privileges, I guess. But
Yeah,
but it was just funny. Like, they're just so smart.
they are. It's kind of like lying. I mean, it's not specifically lying, but it's like you're doing what you know you're not supposed to be doing.
Right. And then I see you, and then you correct yourself, but that's still not okay, because you're not supposed to do that.
And she wasn't going to tell you if you didn't notice.
No, she wasn't. That's why I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah, but then, so she started to rebuild trust, because she did the right thing, right? She stayed on her ABC Mouse, right?
Yes. As long as I was sitting there, she stayed on it. So I'm like, she's conscious in that way, but it's just having, like I told you, just small things like that just gets them to be able, when they're older, like, hey, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, not this. Like,
And
so
it's really unfortunate that we are supposed to touch on this, but we always need to be talking to our children for that they're not giving trust out irresponsibly. They should always be cautious with what adults they trust. Just because of, we had last year, we had a car pull up, and they tried to pick up 2 of the students that were walking home. So just need to be very, isn't that terrifying?
Yeah, that is. Yeah, I had one incident with my son where he rode the bus, and I mean, he is in speech therapist, so technically he rides like the special needs bus. So it's like autistic kids, kids that have like other, mental illnesses or whatever. And there was this one kid that was like having him sit on him, like on his lap or something, and then it just turned into like a ongoing thing for a couple weeks, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with him until like he finally told me. you know, that kid was doing that, and he was like pinching him on the back of the arm, kind of to like, you know, get him to be quiet or whatever. And I'm like, well, what are the bus aides doing? Are they not doing anything? And he's like, well, I call them sometimes, but most of the time they ignore me. So it was just really upsetting because it was just an uncomfortable conversation. So I had to talk to the bus aide, and then like the lead person. Then I had to talk to the principal, and then even his speech therapist, his teachers kind of noticed like a difference in his behavior within like those. I think it took me like 3 weeks to figure it out. And because, you know, like I told you about communicating with your kids and letting them know like, hey, this isn't okay, and that goes into inappropriate touching too. So it took me a long time. I was just kind of upset about it, but I was just like, I felt sorry for the other kid too, because it's like that kind of behavior is kind of shown. It's not something, and I think that kid was like 8 and my son was 6 at the time. Yeah. So I was like, I feel sad, because what if somebody's doing that to the 8-year-old at home? And, you know, I was like, someone needs to talk to his parents. So in my mind, I'm like, you know, that's something that I always emphasize, is just about inappropriate behavior. And if somebody, even family members, and I know you shouldn't like talk bad about your family members either, but, you know, sometimes you can get put into situations where a family member is being inappropriate, but it's like the kid is like, oh, well, that's my aunt, or that's my cousin, or that's whatever. Like, they don't think it's a person they shouldn't be trusting. But at the same time, I'm like, if you feel uncomfortable, tell that person to stop hugging you so much. Tell them to stop kissing you, or like, you know, stop being so close to you. It was like, if you don't feel okay, it's okay to say, hey, can you step back? Like, you're kind of making me feel like not comfortable, or that's inappropriate. So it's just talking to them about those things. I think that makes a big difference. But that was super uncomfortable, like when I had to talk about that. But that, I know that's a conversation I think every parent should have with their kids.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was very brave of you to have that conversation and to stick to it. And it was very brave of your son to, because obviously he didn't, I mean, it was a very uncomfortable situation for him. So, you know, that's a trust building exercise for both of you. So this is the last slide. There are only 2 lasting requests we can hope to give to our children. One of these is roots and the other is wings. So if we give them a nice, good, firm, trusting foundation, then they know how to go out and take risks and try new things and be bold and be brave, knowing that they have that that soft place to land, right? Should they need it. So yeah, that's kind of the end of our class. So yeah. So, how do I get out of the screen share? Stop share. Yeah, so in 2 weeks, we're going to do, our next class is going to be dealing with anger, which I'm sure I need to refresh I need to be taught that too.
Yeah, me too. So yeah, especially, yeah, like adults, kids, how we react, you know, it's a lot sometimes. So totally get it.
It is. And well, and especially right now, it's a lot to just keep yourself calm during the day. I feel like when you and not think about all those things that can start to set you on edge about everything that's happened in 2020.
Right, exactly. We're almost at the end of it, so that's good.
So anyway, thank you so much for coming. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.